The scent hits Arthur Simpson like a freight train the moment Raya walks into the xenobiology lecture hall. Sweet, intoxicating, and utterly alien, it makes his head spin and his heart race. He's never experienced anything like it in his 19 years of life, let alone during his time at Galactic University. As he watches his Suliban classmate take her seat, he notices her skin rapidly shifting through a kaleidoscope of colors, from deep blue to vibrant orange and back again. Professor Xanthor, the Vulcan scholar leading the class, pauses mid-sentence, his compound eyes narrowing as he observes Raya. The Suliban female squirms in her seat, visibly agitated, her tendrils twitching erratically. Arthur finds it difficult to concentrate on the lecture, his gaze continually drawn to Raya's mesmerizing display. As the class ends, Professor Xanthor quietly asks Raya to stay behind. Arthur, driven by an inexplicable urge to linger, pretends to gather his belongings slowly. He can't help but overhear their hushed conversation. "Miss Raya, it appears you've entered your species' mating cycle," the professor states matter-of-factly. "This occurs once every 7 years, correct?" Raya nods, her skin flushing a deep crimson. I didn't expect it so soon. What should I do?" "Your pheromones are potent," Xanthor explains. "They can affect males of various species. It's a delicate situation, given our diverse student body." Arthur's mind reels at this information. He feels an overwhelming need to approach Raya, to offer help or comfort. As he steps closer, a wave of attraction washes over him, stronger than anything he's ever felt before. Raya turns to him, her large opalescent eyes widening in surprise. "Arthur," she says, her voice trembling slightly. I'm sorry. This is so embarrassing." "Don't apologize," Arthur replies, surprised by the steadiness in his voice. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Raya's skin shifts to a soft pink. "I don't know. In Suliban culture, I'm expected to return home for arranged mating, but I want to stay and finish my education. I've worked so hard to get here." Arthur feels torn between his growing feelings and his respect for Raya's culture. "There has to be a way for you to stay," he insists. "We'll figure something out." As they speak, other male students begin to linger in the hallway, their gazes fixed on Raya. The air grows thick with tension, and Arthur instinctively steps closer to his classmate. Suddenly, a sharp voice cuts through the murmur of the gathering crowd. "What's going on here?" Chancellor Dorn, the head of Galactic University, strides towards them, his antennae twitching with concern. "Emergency meeting in my office now," Dorn declares after a brief explanation from Professor Xanthor. "Miss Raya, Mr. Simpson, you'll join us." In the Chancellor's office, a heated debate ensues. Some argue for sending Raya home for the safety of the student body. Arthur, however, finds himself passionately defending her right to stay. "This is a chance for real interspecies understanding," he argues. "We can't just send her away because it's inconvenient or challenging." Chancellor Dorn sighs, his exoskeleton creaking as he leans back in his chair. "Very well. Miss Raya may stay, but under strict guidelines. Mr. Simpson, you'll act as her official liaison, helping her navigate campus life during this delicate time." As Arthur and Raya leave the office, they exchange a look of relief and something more. Despite the influence of her pheromones, Arthur senses a deeper connection forming between them. "Thank you," Raya says softly, "for standing up for me." Arthur nods, feeling both excited and terrified by what lies ahead. "We'll figure this out together," he promises, acutely aware of the challenges they face, disapproving peers, cultural differences, and the intense physiological attraction between them. As they walk side by side through the bustling corridors of Galactic University, Arthur realizes that his life has irrevocably changed. His alien classmate has entered her mating period, and it's driving everyone crazy. But for Arthur, it's the beginning of an adventure he never could have imagined. As Arthur and Raya walked through the bustling corridors of Galactic University, the air around them seemed to shimmer with an invisible energy. Arthur couldn't help but notice the lingering glances and whispers that followed them, a stark reminder of the unique situation they now faced. Days passed and the effects of Raya's mating cycle intensified. The sweet alien scent that had first captivated Arthur now permeated every corner of the campus. In the cafeteria, A Centaurian student's tentacles trembled uncontrollably as Raya passed by. During a quantum physics lecture, a usually stoic Vulcan broke into an impromptu mating dance, much to the shock of his classmates. Arthur observed these changes with growing concern. Human males, in particular, seemed to be struggling with the pheromones' influence. In the gym, he witnessed two of his roommates, typically close friends, nearly come to blows over who would use the weight bench first. Chancellor Dorn's office became a revolving door of complaints and incidents. The Andorian administrator's antennae twitched constantly, a sign of his mounting stress. After a particularly chaotic day that involved a small fire in the botany lab and a nude protest in the quad, Dorn made a difficult decision. "Mr. Simpson, Miss Raya," he addressed them, his exoskeleton creaking as he leaned forward on his desk. "We must take more drastic measures. For the safety of all students, you'll be moved to separate living quarters in the old observatory on the edge of campus." Raya's skin flushed a deep blue, her tendrils curling in embarrassment. "Chancellor, I'm so sorry for all the trouble I'm causing." Dorn's compound eyes softened. "This is not a punishment, Miss Raya. It's a precaution. Mr. Simpson will continue to act as your liaison, but we must minimize your contact with the general student body." As they settled into their new living arrangements, Arthur and Raya found themselves spending more time alone together. The old observatory, with its domed ceiling and panoramic views of the stars, became their sanctuary from the chaos outside. One evening, as they sat on the observatory's balcony watching the twin moons rise, Raya turned to Arthur. Her skin shimmered with a soft lavender hue. "In Suliban culture," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "the 7-year mating cycle is seen as sacred. It's a time of renewal and bonding." Arthur listened intently as Raya described elaborate rituals involving bioluminescent displays and harmonious vibrations. He found himself captivated not just by her words, but by the way her eyes sparkled as she spoke of her home. "What about humans?" Raya asked, her tendrils curling with curiosity. "How do you choose your mates?" Arthur chuckled, running a hand through his hair. "It's a bit less structured. We date, get to know each other. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But when it does—" He paused, his gaze meeting Raya's. "When it does, it can be pretty amazing." The air between them crackled with unspoken tension. Arthur felt an overwhelming urge to reach out and touch Raya's shimmering skin, to pull her close, and he cleared his throat, breaking the moment. "We should probably get some rest," he said, standing up abruptly. Raya nodded, her skin flushing a deep crimson. "Yes, you're right. Good night, Arthur." As the days passed, their connection deepened, but so did the challenges they faced. Arthur found it increasingly difficult to resist the effects of Raya's pheromones, often catching himself staring at her for long periods or making excuses to be near her. Raya, in turn, struggled with intense urges that left her trembling and disoriented. One afternoon, as Arthur returned from a supply run, he overheard a group of male students talking in hushed tones near the observatory. "Tonight's the night," a gruff voice said. Arthur recognized it as belonging to Korg, a Klingon exchange student known for his hot temper. "We'll show that Suliban female what real warriors are made of." Arthur's blood ran cold. He quickly made his way back to the observatory, his mind racing. He needed to warn Raya and alert campus security, but he knew they might not arrive in time. As night fell, Arthur paced nervously in his room. Suddenly, he heard a commotion outside. Looking out the window, he saw Korg and a group of students from various species approaching Raya's quarters. Without hesitation, Arthur rushed out, positioning himself between the group and Raya's door. "Stop right there!" he called out, his voice steadier than he felt. Korg sneered, his ridged forehead glistening with sweat. "Stand aside, human. This doesn't concern you." "I can't let you do this," Arthur replied, spreading his arms wide. Behind him, he heard the click of Raya's door locking. The standoff intensified as Korg and his followers advanced. Arthur's heart pounded in his chest, but he stood his ground. In the distance, he heard the faint wail of campus security sirens. As Korg reached for him, Arthur braced himself for the confrontation, knowing that the next few moments would determine not just his and Raya's fate, but potentially the future of interspecies relationships at Galactic University. As Arthur braced himself for the confrontation with Korg and his followers, the wail of sirens grew louder. Suddenly, a blinding light illuminated the area, and Chief Officer Zax's authoritative voice boomed through a megaphone. "Stand down immediately! This is campus security!" The Andorian's antennae twitched with agitation as he and his team swiftly surrounded the group. Korg's followers, startled by the sudden appearance of authority, began to back away. Korg himself, however, remained defiant, his Klingon pride refusing to yield. "This is none of your concern, Andorian," Korg growled, his fist clenched at his sides. Chief Zax's ice-blue skin seemed to shimmer in the flashing lights of the security vehicles. "I beg to differ. All of you are in violation of campus regulations. Stand down now or face immediate expulsion." The tension in the air was palpable as Korg weighed his options. Finally, with a frustrated roar, he relaxed his stance. "Fine, but this isn't over." As Zax's team moved in to restrain Korg and his followers, Arthur let out a sigh of relief. His momentary respite was short-lived, however, as he felt a firm hand on his shoulder. "Mr. Simpson," Chief Zax said, his voice stern, "you're coming with us as well." Arthur's eyes widened in surprise. "But I was just trying to protect—" "Save it for the Chancellor," Zax interrupted, guiding Arthur towards one of the security vehicles. As they drove away, Arthur caught a glimpse of Raya watching from her window, her skin a swirl of worried purple and grateful green. The next morning, Chancellor Dorn's office was a hive of activity. Arthur sat outside, his leg bouncing nervously as he waited for his disciplinary hearing. The door opened, and a visibly shaken Korg and his followers filed out, their faces a mix of anger and shame. "Arthur Simpson," Chancellor Dorn's voice called from within the office. As Arthur entered, he was surprised to see not only the Chancellor, but also Professor Xanthor, and to his shock, Raya. Her presence sent a wave of her intoxicating scent washing over him, making it difficult to focus. Chancellor Dorn's exoskeleton creaked as he leaned forward. "Mr. Simpson, you stand accused of violating our isolation protocols, potentially endangering yourself and others. What do you have to say for yourself?" Arthur opened his mouth to respond, but Raya cut in. "Chancellor, please. Arthur saved me from a potentially dangerous situation. If he hadn't intervened—" "Miss Raya," Dorn interrupted, his antennae twitching. "While I appreciate your input, Mr. Simpson's actions, regardless of intent, put many at risk." Professor Xanthor cleared his throat, his compound eyes reflecting the office's harsh lighting. "If I may, Chancellor, perhaps we can turn this unfortunate incident into a learning opportunity." As Xanthor outlined his proposal for a research project studying interspecies relationships and Suliban mating cycles, Arthur's mind raced. The idea of being able to stay close to Raya, to explore their connection under the guise of scientific study, both thrilled and terrified him. Chancellor Dorn listened intently, his antennae gradually relaxing. "An intriguing proposal, Professor, but what of Mr. Simpson's punishment?" "I suggest we place him on probation," Xanthor replied, "and appoint him as a research assistant for this project. It would allow him to make amends while contributing to our understanding of interspecies dynamics." Before Dorn could respond, the office door burst open. Two Suliban adults rushed in, their skin flickering rapidly between shades of concern and anger. "Raya!" the female cried out, her tendrils reaching for her daughter. Raya's skin flushed a deep blue of embarrassment. "Mother, father, what are you doing here?" As Raya's parents, Selok and Lyra, embraced their daughter, Chancellor Dorn quickly brought them up to speed on the situation. Arthur watched the exchange nervously, acutely aware of the disapproving glances Selok shot in his direction. "This is unacceptable," Selok declared, his skin pulsing an angry red. "We're taking Raya home immediately." Raya pulled away from her parents, her skin shifting to a determined orange. "No, father. I want to stay. I want to finish my education and—" She glanced at Arthur, her color softening to a warm pink. "I want to explore my feelings for Arthur." The room fell silent, the weight of Raya's words hanging in the air. Arthur's heart raced, a mix of joy and anxiety coursing through him. Lyra gasped, her tendrils curling in shock. Raya, you can't be serious. A human? It's simply not done. As the argument between Raya and her parents intensified, Professor Xanthor stepped forward, his calm voice cutting through the tension. Perhaps my research proposal offers a solution that can satisfy everyone's concerns. He explained the project in detail, emphasizing its potential to bridge cultural gaps and advance interspecies understanding. Chancellor Dorn, seeing an opportunity to transform the crisis into a groundbreaking study, threw his support behind the idea. This could be a landmark moment for Galactic University, Dorn mused, his antennae quivering with excitement. Salok and Lyra exchanged uncertain glances, their skins shifting through a range of conflicted colors. Finally, Salok spoke, his voice heavy with reluctance. We will agree to this experiment, but we insist on staying on Earth to monitor the situation. Chancellor Dorn nodded. Of course, we'll arrange accommodations for you on campus, immediately. As the meeting concluded, Arthur's head spun with the rapid turn of events. He'd gone from facing expulsion to becoming a key participant in a groundbreaking research project. And through it all, Raya stood by his side, her presence both a comfort and a source of exhilarating uncertainty. As they left the Chancellor's office, Arthur and Raya found themselves alone in the corridor for a brief moment. Raya's skin shimmered with a soft, rosy glow. Arthur, she said softly, her opalescent eyes meeting his. Thank you for everything. I know this won't be easy, but I'm glad we'll be facing it together. Arthur smiled, fighting the urge to reach out and touch her shimmering skin. Me too, Raya. Whatever comes next, we'll figure it out. As they walked towards their new lives as subjects of interspecies study, Arthur couldn't help but wonder what challenges and discoveries lay ahead. The halls of Galactic University seemed alive with possibility, the air thick with the promise of uncharted territory, both scientific and personal. Emotional, the promise of new discoveries hung in the air, mingling with the tension of uncharted territory. As Arthur and Raya stepped out of the Chancellor's office, they were immediately swept into the whirlwind of Professor Xanthor's ambitious research project. The next few days passed in a blur of activity as the professor assembled a team of experts and set up a state-of-the-art laboratory on campus. Arthur found himself standing in awe before the array of advanced monitoring systems that filled the lab. Sleek biosensors, holographic displays, and neural interfaces lined the walls, their soft hums and glowing screens creating an atmosphere of scientific anticipation. Impressive, isn't it? Professor Xanthor's multifaceted eyes glinted with excitement as he guided Arthur and Raya through the facility. These systems will allow us to monitor every aspect of your physiological and psychological responses during your interactions. Raya's skin shimmered with a mix of curiosity and nervousness, her tendrils curling slightly. What exactly will we be doing, Professor? Xanthor's mandibles clicked as he explained. We'll start with a series of controlled experiments. You'll engage in various scenarios, from casual conversations to more intimate settings. He paused, his compound eyes focusing on Arthur. All while we closely monitor your vital signs, hormone levels, and neurological responses. Arthur swallowed hard, suddenly very aware of Raya's presence beside him. The thought of their intimate moments being scrutinized by a team of scientists made his palms sweat. The first few experiments were relatively straightforward. Arthur and Raya sat in a comfortably furnished room, engaged in casual conversation while sensors recorded their every reaction. As the days progressed, the scenarios became more involved. They shared meals, watched emotionally charged holovids, and even participated in light physical activities together. One afternoon, as they sat side by side during a particularly intense monitoring session, Arthur couldn't help but notice the way Raya's skin pulsed with a soft, rosy glow. Her scent, always intoxicating, seemed to fill the room with an irresistible sweetness. Arthur, Raya whispered, her opalescent eyes meeting his. I'm feeling something. Something strong. Before Arthur could respond, alarms blared throughout the lab. Professor Xanthor's voice crackled over the intercom. Fascinating. Arthur, your physiology is showing remarkable adaptations to Raya's pheromones. This is unprecedented. As the days turned into weeks, Arthur and Raya's feelings for each other deepened. transcending the clinical nature of their interactions. However, their growing closeness did not go unnoticed. One evening, as Arthur was leaving the lab, he overheard raised voices coming from Chancellor Dorn's office. Curiosity getting the better of him, he paused near the partially open door. "This has gone far enough," Salok's voice rang out, tinged with anger and concern. "The intensity of their attachment is becoming dangerous." "I assure you," Chancellor Dorn replied, his tone measured, "we are taking every precaution to ensure the safety and well-being of both participants." "Precautions?" Lyra's voice quivered with emotion. "Our daughter is forming a pair bond with a human. This goes against everything in our culture." Arthur's heart raced as he listened. He knew Raya's parents had been skeptical of the research, but he hadn't realized the depth of their opposition. The situation grew even more complex with the arrival of the Suliban delegation. Led by Ambassador Krell, a stern-faced Suliban male with deep violet skin, they brought an air of authority and skepticism to the campus. During one of the controlled interaction sessions, Arthur found himself under the scrutinizing gaze of Ambassador Krell. The Suliban's eyes narrowed as he observed Arthur's reactions to Raya's presence. "Tell me, human," Krell's voice was cold and precise, "do you truly understand the implications of your involvement in this experiment?" Before Arthur could formulate a response, he felt a sudden wave of dizziness. The room seemed to spin, and Raya's scent became overwhelming. He stumbled, catching himself on the edge of a nearby console. "Arthur!" Raya cried out, her skin flashing with concern. Professor Xanthor rushed to Arthur's side, his mandibles clicking rapidly as he examined the readouts on his handheld scanner. "Extraordinary," he muttered. "Arthur's body is mimicking Suliban mating cycle symptoms. This is a breakthrough." As the research team swarmed around him, Arthur's vision blurred. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was Raya's face, her eyes wide with fear and something else. Something primal and undeniable. Arthur awoke in the medical bay, his body feeling strange and foreign. Dr. Alara, the Betazoid physician, stood over him, her dark eyes filled with concern. "How are you feeling, Arthur?" she asked, her voice gentle but probing. Arthur tried to sit up but found his limbs uncooperative. I'm not sure. Everything feels different." Dr. Alara nodded, her expression grave. "Your prolonged exposure to Raya's pheromones has triggered significant physiological changes. We're still trying to understand the full extent of these alterations." As Arthur struggled to process this information, the door to the medical bay slid open. Professor Xanthor entered, followed closely by Chancellor Dorn and Ambassador Krell. "Mr. Simpson," Chancellor Dorn began, his antenna twitching nervously, "we find ourselves in a rather unprecedented situation." Ambassador Krell stepped forward, his violet skin darkening with displeasure. "This experiment has gone too far. I am ordering its immediate termination." Arthur's heart sank. The thought of being separated from Raya, especially now, was unbearable. He opened his mouth to protest, but Professor Xanthor spoke first. "If I may," the professor's compound eyes gleamed with scientific fervor, "I have a proposal that might allow us to continue our research while addressing the concerns of all parties involved." As Xanthor outlined his plan for a controlled simulation of Suliban mating rituals, adapted for human physiology, Arthur's mind raced. The idea was bold, potentially dangerous, but it offered a chance to understand these new feelings, to be with Raya, to bridge the gap between their species. The room fell silent as Xanthor finished speaking. All eyes turned to Ambassador Krell, whose face remained an unreadable mask. The fate of the research, of Arthur and Raya's relationship, and perhaps the future of interspecies understanding, hung in the balance. Arthur held his breath, waiting for the ambassador's response, knowing that whatever came next would change everything. The course of human Suliban relations, forever. "I have a proposal," Professor Xanthor said, his compound eyes gleaming with excitement. "A controlled simulation of Suliban mating rituals, adapted for human physiology." The room fell silent as the professor outlined his audacious plan. Arthur's head spun, trying to process the implications. A mating ritual with Raya. His heart raced at the thought. Ambassador Krell's violet skin darkened. This is preposterous. You cannot expect us to allow such a violation of our sacred customs. Chancellor Dorn's antennae quivered as he spoke. Ambassador, please consider the potential benefits. This could revolutionize our understanding of interspecies compatibility. As the debate raged on, Dr. Alara approached Arthur's bedside. How do you feel about this, Arthur? Are you willing to participate? Arthur glanced at Raya, who stood nearby, her skin shimmering with a mix of anticipation and nervousness. He nodded slowly. If it means a chance to be with Raya, to understand what's happening to me, I'll do it. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of activity. A section of the laboratory was transformed into a replica of a traditional Suliban mating chamber. Arthur watched in awe as holographic projectors created the illusion of the Suliban homeworld's alien landscape. Dr. Alara fitted Arthur with a specialized pheromone suppressor. This should prevent you from being overwhelmed by Raya's natural emissions, she explained, adjusting the device on his wrist. As the day of the experiment approached, Arthur underwent intensive briefings on Suliban mating customs. He struggled to memorize the intricate steps of the courtship dance, his human limbs feeling clumsy as he practiced. Finally, the day arrived. Arthur stood at the entrance to the simulated mating chamber, his heart pounding. Raya appeared beside him, her skin glowing with a soft, pinkish hue. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Arthur took a deep breath. "As ready as I'll ever be." They stepped into the chamber together. The air was thick with the scent of alien flora, and the simulated moons of the Suliban homeworld cast an ethereal light over the scene. Arthur was acutely aware of the observers watching from behind one-way glass, the research team, Suliban officials, and university administrators. The ritual began. Arthur and Raya moved through the steps of the courtship dance, their bodies swaying in sync with the low, thrumming music that filled the chamber. As they danced, Arthur felt a strange sensation coursing through his body. It was as if his very cells were aligning with Raya's movements. Suddenly, a sharp beep cut through the air. Arthur's pheromone suppressor had malfunctioned. Panic gripped him as he braced for the overwhelming rush of hormones he'd experienced before. But instead of chaos, he felt harmony. His body adapted rapidly, achieving a state of biochemical balance with Raya. Their movements became more fluid, more natural, as if they were two parts of a single organism. As the ritual reached its peak, Arthur felt a presence in his mind, Raya's thoughts, her emotions, flowing into him. Their eyes met, and in that moment, they shared a connection deeper than anything he had ever experienced. The chamber faded away, and Arthur found himself floating in a sea of memories. He saw Raya's childhood on the Suliban homeworld, felt her loneliness as the only Suliban student at Galactic University, experienced her joy at finding acceptance and understanding with him. When the ritual concluded, Arthur and Raya emerged from the chamber, hand in hand. The observation room erupted into chaos. Scientists rushed to analyze the data, exclaiming over the unprecedented readings. Dr. Alara approached them, her eyes wide with amazement. "Arthur, your body, it's undergone further changes. You've developed features that mirror Suliban biology. This is extraordinary." As the implications of what had occurred sank in, Arthur realized that his life would never be the same. He and Raya had become something entirely new, a bridge between two species once thought incompatible. News of the experiment's success spread rapidly. Within days, Galactic University was flooded with inquiries from across the galaxy. Chancellor Dorn announced the creation of a new department dedicated to interspecies research, with Arthur and Raya as its first graduate students. But not everyone welcomed these developments. As Arthur and Raya walked across campus one evening, they noticed a group of protesters gathered near the science building. Humans and Sulibans stood side by side, holding signs decrying their relationship as an abomination. "This isn't over," Arthur murmured, squeezing Raya's hand. "We've opened a door, but there's still so much work to be done." Raya's skin shimmered with drive. "Then we'll face it together. Our journey is just beginning." As they continued their walk, Arthur's mind raced with the possibilities and challenges that lay ahead. The galaxy was changing, and they were at the heart of it all. Whatever came next, he knew that his bond with Raya would be the constant that guided them through the uncharted territories of their shared future. As Arthur and Raya stepped away from the protesters, they found themselves thrust into a whirlwind of activity. The success of their groundbreaking experiment had captured the attention of scientists, diplomats, and curious individuals across the galaxy. Before they knew it, they were embarking on a galactic tour to promote interspecies relationships and share their unique experiences. Their journey took them to bustling space stations, verdant alien worlds, and even to the crystalline cities of gas giant moons. Everywhere they went, Arthur and Raya encountered a mix of fascination, support, and opposition. On one planet, they were greeted with a parade of floating bioluminescent creatures. On another, they narrowly escaped an angry mob of isolationists who viewed their relationship as a threat to genetic purity. As they traversed the cosmos, Arthur continued to adapt to his new physiology. He marveled at the way his skin could now shift hues in response to his emotions, mirroring Raya's natural abilities. Their bond deepened with each passing day, their thoughts and feelings intertwining in ways that defied conventional understanding. Just as their tour was gaining momentum, an urgent message from Chancellor Dorn interrupted their plans. Arthur's heart sank as he read the transmission. A radical group calling themselves the Purity Alliance had launched a series of attacks on Galactic University and other institutions supporting interspecies research. "We need to go back," Arthur said, his skin flickering with concern. Raya nodded, her opalescent eyes reflecting his worry. "Our work is more important now than ever." They boarded the next transport to Earth, their minds racing with possibilities and fears. Upon arrival, they found the university campus transformed. Armed guards patrolled the grounds, their weapons at the ready. Shimmering force fields enveloped key research facilities, casting an eerie glow over the once peaceful academic setting. Professor Xanthor met them at the entrance to the main laboratory, his mandibles clicking rapidly as he spoke. "The situation has escalated beyond our initial estimates," he explained, leading them through a series of security checkpoints. "The Purity Alliance has gained significant political influence, both here and on the Suliban homeworld." Inside the lab, they found Chancellor Dorn in deep discussion with a holographic projection of the Galactic Science Council. The Andorian administrator's antenna drooped with exhaustion as he turned to greet them. "Arthur, Raya, thank you for coming so quickly," Dorn said. "We're discussing the possibility of relocating the entire interspecies studies program to a neutral space station." As the implications of this move sank in, Arthur felt a surge of perseverance. He glanced at Raya, seeing the same grit reflected in her shimmering skin. "Chancellor," he said, "we'd like to volunteer for a diplomatic mission to the Suliban homeworld." Raya's eyes widened, but she nodded in agreement. "Our bond might help sway public opinion," she added. "We need to show that interspecies relationships can work, that they're not a threat." Chancellor Dorn's antennae perked up with interest. "It's risky, but it might be our best chance. I'll make the arrangements immediately." Days later, Arthur found himself standing on the surface of the Suliban homeworld, his newly adapted physiology allowing him to breathe the planet's unique atmosphere. Raya stood beside him, her hand clasped tightly in his, as they faced the imposing structure of the Suliban High Council chambers. A crowd had gathered to witness their arrival. Arthur could sense the mix of emotions emanating from the assembled Suliban citizens: curiosity, admiration, and in some cases, hostility. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the challenge ahead. As they entered the council chambers, Arthur felt a sudden wave of dizziness. His skin began to change color rapidly, cycling through a spectrum of hues. Raya steadied him, her touch grounding him as he struggled to control the unexpected onset of Suliban-like symptoms. The High Council members leaned forward, their attention captured by this display of Arthur's physiological adaptation. Whispers rippled through the chamber as Raya supported Arthur through the episode, demonstrating the depth of their connection. When Arthur regained his composure, he and Raya began their presentation. They shared their experiences, the scientific breakthroughs they'd witnessed, and their vision for a future where interspecies relationships could flourish. Halfway through their speech, an aide rushed into the chamber, interrupting the proceedings. "Counselors, we've just received word of an attack on the space station designated for the Interspecies Studies program," the aide announced, his voice trembling. A murmur of shock rippled through the room. Arthur and Raya exchanged glances, the gravity of the situation weighing heavily upon them. The attack on the space station had raised the stakes of their mission exponentially. As discussions with the High Council continued, a faction began to emerge that saw the potential benefits of interspecies compatibility. One council member, her skin shimmering with an intensity that reflected her enthusiasm, proposed a bold plan. "We could provide a secure location on one of our colony worlds," she suggested, "a place where the interspecies research program could continue under Suliban protection, yet operate independently." Arthur's heart raced at the possibility. He and Raya began working with supportive council members to draft a proposal for a new Interspecies Academy. As they worked, news arrived that shifted the tide of public opinion. Reports of growing protests against the Purity Alliance's actions began to flood in from across the galaxy. Amidst the flurry of activity, Arthur received a message that brought tears to his eyes. Raya's parents, Salok and Lyra, had experienced a change of heart. They expressed their support for Arthur and Raya's union, recognizing the positive changes in their daughter and the potential benefits of interspecies relationships. As Arthur and Raya prepared to return to Earth with the Suliban High Council's proposal, they knew that their greatest challenge still lay ahead. They would need to convince Earth's governments and the Galactic Science Council to support the creation of the Interspecies Academy. Standing on the launch pad, waiting to board their ship, Arthur turned to Raya. Her skin glowed with a mix of excitement and apprehension that mirrored his own emotions. He squeezed her hand, feeling the familiar surge of connection between them. "Ready?" he asked, his own skin shifting to match her hues. Raya nodded, her opalescent eyes shining with tenacity. "Together," she replied, as they stepped forward into the unknown, carrying with them the hopes for a new era of interspecies understanding. Cooperation as they stepped onto the transport ship. The journey back to Earth was tense, filled with anticipation and uncertainty. Arthur and Raya spent hours reviewing their proposal, refining their arguments, and preparing for the challenges that lay ahead. As they approached Earth's atmosphere, the familiar blue orb growing larger in the viewport, Arthur felt a mix of hope and apprehension. Their ship touched down at the Galactic University spaceport, where they were immediately greeted by a grim-faced Chancellor Dorn. The Andorian's antennae twitched nervously as he ushered them into a waiting hovercar. "I'm afraid the situation has deteriorated significantly in your absence," Dorn said, his voice low and urgent. "The Purity Alliance has gained considerable traction. They're organizing large-scale protests across major cities." Arthur's skin rippled with concern, mimicking the deep blue of Dorn's complexion. "How bad is it?" "Several Earth governments are considering legislation to ban interspecies relationships," Dorn replied, his antennae drooping. "They're citing concerns about genetic purity and cultural preservation." Raya's hand tightened around Arthur's. "We need to act quickly," she said, her opalescent eyes gleaming with dedication. As their hovercar navigated through the bustling skyways of the city, Arthur caught glimpses of the unrest below. Crowds had gathered in public squares, their angry chants barely audible through the vehicle's soundproofing. Holographic signs flickered in the air, bearing slogans like "Keep Earth Pure" and "Protect Our Species." The sight strengthened Arthur's perseverance. He turned to Dorn, his voice steady. "We need to go public with our story. It's time to take this to the Galactic News Network." Dorn's antennae perked up. "Are you sure? Once you do this, there's no going back." Arthur nodded, feeling Raya's silent agreement through their bond. "It's our best chance to change minds on a large scale." Within hours, Arthur and Raya found themselves in the central studio of GNN, the most widely viewed media outlet in the known universe. As the countdown to their live broadcast began, Arthur felt a familiar tingling sensation spreading through his body. "And we're live in 3, 2, 1. As billions of viewers across the galaxy tuned in, Arthur began to speak, sharing their journey and the potential benefits of interspecies relationships. Halfway through his impassioned speech, he felt a sudden surge of energy coursing through him. Before the eyes of countless viewers, Arthur's skin began to shift and change. Iridescent patterns rippled across his surface, mirroring the complex bioluminescent displays of Suliban emotion. His eyes, once a deep brown, now shimmered with an opalescent quality similar to Raya's. Gasps echoed through the studio as Arthur's transformation unfolded live on air. Raya, standing beside him, placed a supportive hand on his shoulder, her own skin pulsing in harmony with his. "This," Arthur said, his voice steady despite the ongoing changes, "is the result of our bond. It's not a threat or an abomination. It's an evolution, a step towards greater understanding between species." The broadcast sparked intense debate across the galaxy. Social media networks exploded with discussions, analyses, and personal stories. Other interspecies couples inspired by Arthur and Raya's courage began to come forward, sharing their own experiences and challenges. In the days that followed, Arthur and Raya found themselves at the center of a galactic whirlwind. They were invited to speak at universities, diplomatic forums, and even before the Galactic Science Council itself. As they shared their story and the potential for groundbreaking research, public opinion began to shift. The Galactic Science Council, recognizing the immense scientific potential, publicly endorsed the proposed Interspecies Academy. This endorsement carried significant weight, putting pressure on Earth's governments to reconsider their stance on interspecies relationships. Amidst the growing support, Professor Xanthor made a breakthrough in his research. He discovered that exposure to Raya's pheromones had activated dormant genes in Arthur's DNA, suggesting a hidden capacity for interspecies adaptation in humans. "This could revolutionize our understanding of galactic evolution," Xanthor explained, his mandibles clicking excitedly as he showed Arthur and Raya his findings. "It raises fascinating questions about the interconnectedness of various species." As support for their cause grew, so did the desperation of the Purity Alliance. The extremist group launched a series of cyber attacks on key research facilities, attempting to destroy valuable data related to interspecies studies. Arthur, Raya, and a team of xenobiologists and computer experts worked tirelessly to protect the research. During one particularly vicious attack, Arthur felt a strange connection to the compromised systems. Acting on instinct, he placed his hand on a computer terminal. To everyone's amazement, Arthur's hybrid physiology created a bridge between Suliban and human technology. His mind interfaced directly with the system, allowing him to navigate through layers of code and firewalls with ease. "I can see the attack patterns," Arthur said, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "I can trace them back to their source." Within minutes, Arthur had not only repelled the cyber attack, but also identified the location of several key Purity Alliance leaders. The information was quickly passed to galactic law enforcement, leading to a series of high-profile arrests that dealt a severe blow to the extremist group. The Galactic Council, impressed by the potential applications of Arthur's unique abilities, fast-tracked the approval for the Interspecies Academy. They selected a neutral planet in a strategic location, ensuring easy access for students and researchers from across the galaxy. As preparations for the Academy began, Arthur and Raya faced a new personal challenge. Raya's next mating cycle was approaching, and medical experts were uncertain how it would affect their relationship given Arthur's physiological changes. "We'll face it together," Raya said, her skin shimmering with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Whatever happens, it's another opportunity to learn and grow." Arthur nodded, feeling a surge of love and connection through their bond. "And whatever we discover will help future interspecies couples," he added. As the day of the Interspecies Academy's groundbreaking ceremony approached, Arthur and Raya found themselves standing before a diverse crowd of representatives from dozens of alien races. The atmosphere was electric with possibility and hope. Chancellor Dorn stepped forward, his antennae quivering with emotion. "Today, we take a monumental step towards a more united galaxy," he announced. "Arthur, Raya, would you do the honors?" Hand in hand, Arthur and Raya approached the ceremonial beacon. As they placed their palms on the activation panel, the device hummed to life. A brilliant beam of light shot into the sky, piercing the clouds and reaching towards the stars. The beacon's light, visible from space, would guide students from across the galaxy to this new haven of learning and acceptance. As the assembled crowd cheered, Arthur and Raya shared a look of quiet wonder. Their journey had transformed not only their lives but had set in motion changes that would reshape galactic society. As the beacon's light pulsed steadily into the cosmos, they knew that this was not an end, but a beginning. The true work of building understanding and acceptance across species was just starting, and they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the Interspecies Academy took shape, Arthur and Raya found themselves at the forefront of groundbreaking research. Their unique bond had opened up new possibilities in the field of interspecies compatibility, and they were eager to contribute further to this burgeoning science. With Raya's next mating cycle approaching, the couple made a bold decision. They volunteered to undergo a series of tests and observations in a specially designed facility within the academy. Professor Xanthor, his mandibles clicking with excitement, oversaw the preparation of the research protocols. Your willingness to share this intimate experience will advance our understanding immeasurably, Xanthor said, his compound eyes gleaming with scientific curiosity. As the day of Raya's cycle drew near, Arthur felt a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. The couple was escorted to a private chamber within the research wing, equipped with state-of-the-art monitoring devices and staffed by a diverse team of xenobiologists. The room was designed to be both comfortable and functional, with soft lighting that could be adjusted to suit Suliban or human preferences. As Arthur and Raya settled in, they could feel the eyes of the research team upon them, watching with rapt attention. As Raya's cycle began, Arthur experienced a sudden rush of sensation. His skin began to tingle, and he watched in amazement as it took on a vibrant, shimmering quality reminiscent of Suliban bioluminescence. The patterns rippling across his skin were more intricate and vivid than ever before. Arthur, your neural patterns are aligning with Raya's. Professor Xanthor's voice came through the room's communication system. It's unprecedented. Arthur turned to Raya, their eyes meeting in a moment of shared wonder. Suddenly, he felt a presence in his mind, a warmth that was unmistakably Raya. Without speaking, he understood her thoughts, her feelings, as if they were his own. We can hear each other's thoughts, Raya said aloud, her voice filled with awe. It's like a perfect understanding. The research team watched in fascination as Arthur and Raya communicated silently, their expressions and body language changing in perfect synchronization. Holographic displays around the room lit up with data, showing the couple's brainwaves moving in harmony. As the cycle reached its peak, Arthur and Raya felt an overwhelming surge of energy. Their synchronized brainwaves triggered a cascade of genetic expressions in both of them. A visible thread of glowing energy appeared, connecting their bodies. The room erupted in a flurry of activity as the research team scrambled to document this unprecedented phenomenon. Arthur and Raya, however, were lost in the intensity of their connection, oblivious to the commotion around them. When the energy finally subsided, Arthur felt different. He looked down at his hands, flexing them experimentally. His skin shimmered with Suliban-like patterns, but now he could control them at will. He felt a new strength coursing through his body, a perfect balance between his human and Suliban attributes. Raya, too, had changed. She took a deep breath, marveling at how easily her lungs processed Earth's atmosphere. I feel adapted, she said, her opalescent eyes wide with wonder. Professor Xanthor burst into the room, his antennae quivering with excitement. Extraordinary, he exclaimed. Your DNA has undergone significant reconfiguration. Arthur, your hybrid state has stabilized. And Raya, your body has developed resilience to Earth's environment. This bond you've formed, it's unlike anything we've ever seen. News of Arthur and Raya's unprecedented bond spread rapidly across the galaxy. The Interspecies Academy was soon inundated with applications from couples of various species, all hoping to explore the possibility of forming similar connections. In the days that followed, Arthur and Raya found themselves at the center of a media frenzy. The Galactic Science Council declared their bond a breakthrough of the millennium, opening up new avenues for research into the fundamental nature of life and consciousness. As the excitement around their bond grew, Arthur and Raya began to feel overwhelmed by the constant attention. They longed for a chance to explore their new connection in privacy, away from the prying eyes of researchers and reporters. One evening, as they stood on the balcony of their quarters, looking out at the stars, Arthur turned to Raya. "What if we took some time for ourselves?" he suggested. "We could explore uncharted regions of the galaxy, see if there are more examples of natural interspecies adaptation out there." Raya's skin pulsed with excitement at the idea. "A private expedition," she said, her eyes shining. "Just the two of us, discovering the universe together." Their decision to step back from the public eye was met with understanding from Chancellor Dorn and the Academy staff. A grand ceremony was organized to honor their contributions and bid them farewell. The day of the ceremony arrived, and Arthur and Raya found themselves standing before a diverse crowd of representatives from hundreds of worlds. Chancellor Dorn, now serving as the Academy's first director, approached them with a small, ornate box. "For your unprecedented contribution to interspecies understanding," Dorn announced, his antennae quivering with emotion, "I present you with the newly created Galactic Unity Medal." As Dorn pinned the medals to their chests, Arthur caught sight of his human family in the crowd, standing proudly alongside Raya's Suliban parents. The sight of their families united in celebration filled him with joy. With the ceremony concluded, Arthur and Raya made their way to the launch pad where their ship, the Harmony, awaited. Its hull gleamed with a unique blend of human and Suliban technology, a testament to the couple's pioneering spirit. As they prepared to board, Arthur turned to address the gathered crowd one last time. "Our journey began with an unexpected mating cycle," he said, his voice carrying across the hushed audience. "It has led us to discoveries beyond our wildest dreams. But this is just the beginning. There's a whole universe out there, filled with possibilities for connection and understanding between species." Raya stepped forward, her hand intertwined with Arthur's. "We go now to explore those possibilities," she added. "And we encourage all of you to do the same. The future of our galaxy lies in unity, in finding the threads that connect us all." With a final wave to the cheering crowd, Arthur and Raya boarded the Harmony. As the ship's engines hummed to life, they took their seats in the cockpit, surrounded by a seamless blend of human and Suliban controls. Arthur initiated the launch sequence, feeling the ship respond to his thoughts as much as his physical inputs. Beside him, Raya's hands danced over the navigation console, plotting their course into uncharted space. As the Harmony lifted off, its hull shimmering with energy, Arthur and Raya exchanged a loving glance. Their bond glowed brightly between them, a physical manifestation of their connection. Through it, they shared their excitement, their apprehension, and their love, ready to face whatever new adventures awaited them in the vast expanse of the universe. The ship rose higher, leaving the Academy behind. Students and faculty from dozens of species watched its ascent, their faces filled with awe and hope. As the Harmony reached the edge of the atmosphere, its faster-than-light drive engaged. In a brilliant flash of light, the ship disappeared into the cosmos, carrying Arthur and Raya towards new horizons. Their story, once a tale of two students brought together by an unexpected mating cycle, had become a beacon of unity for the entire galaxy. And now, as they ventured into the unknown, they carried with them the promise of a future where love knew no boundaries, not even those between species. The Harmony streaked through the stars, leaving behind a legacy of hope and possibility. Back on the Academy grounds, the crowd slowly dispersed, their minds filled with dreams of what the future might hold. The next chapter in the story of interspecies unity had begun, and its pages were yet to be written.
If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.